Hello viewer. Today I'm going to be reading you a fanfiction that I wrote. Okay, let's start. Marinette's 16th birthday. It was Marinette's 16th birthday, and she was celebrating it with her friends. Marinette, as well as the guests, Alia, Nino, Adrian, Rose, Julika, Milen, Ivan, Alex, Kim, Max, Nathaniel, and Mark were all having fun, eating too many of those sweet chili and sour cream chips. Alia all of a sudden stood up onto the ladder of Marinette's loft bed and yelled for everyone's attention. The whole room was now almost silent, and everyone was just frozen, staring at and waiting for what Alia wanted to say. "Let's please spin the bottle," said Alia, while she hung on the ladder with one arm and a foot. "I don't want to play," said Nathaniel. "Me neither," said Max. "I'm not saying everyone has to play. Whoever wants to play, sit here." She sits down and crosses her legs. "Okay, join the circle if you want to play." Marinette was surprisingly the first to join Alia in the circle, sitting next to her. Next to Alia sat Nino, who was then followed by Adrian, who sat next to Nino. Then Rose sat next to Marinette, followed by Julika, who sat by Rose. Then Alex went and sat next to Julika, and Kim sat by Adrian, followed by Ivan and Milen. "Okay, who wants to go first?" asked Alia. "I will," said Rose, grabbing an empty bottle of Coke. She spun the bottle and it spun round and round. It pointed to Marinette, then Alia, and so on and so forth. It began to slow down. Ivan, Milen, Rose, so on and so forth. The bottle stopped, and Rose looked next to her, at Julika. Rose stared into Julika's sparkling eye. Because, her, one of her eyes is hidden. They both inched closer. Their lips locked. They closed their eyes as their lips continued to touch, and they parted both with red faces. "I'll go next," announced Alia. She spun the bottle. It spun round quickly, but it shortly began to spin slower. And it started slowing down and was about to stop by Kim. Nino started to panic and made the bottle point towards himself. "Nino, come on, that's against the rules." "But I guess we can make one exception," said Alia in response. They kissed, holding each other close as their lips intertwined. Adrian decided to go next. He spun it, and it began to slow down, and almost stopped, pointing to Marinette. But, just as it was about to stop, a small gust of wind blew past her and landed, pointing to Nino. Does this count, or can I spin it again?" Adrian said, laughing awkwardly. "Oh, come on! You have to! It's the rules!" said Alia. "But on the lips? Or just on the cheeks?" said Adrian. "Come on! It's not gay to kiss the homies," said Kim. "What?" said Alex. "Oh, nothing," said Kim. Adrian quickly but reluctantly shared an awkward kiss with his also cishet friend Nino, and they both awkwardly laughed. "It's Marinette's turn," Alia says. "Okay," replied Marinette. She leaned over to the bottle and gave it a really hard spin. It spun around once, twice, 3 times. The 4th time it began to slow down, and Marinette began to follow the bottle with her eyes, and watching as it slowly came to a stop. She looked up to see who it landed on. She met the gaze of Adrian. She blushed, and she felt warm inside, and her heart began to beat faster. She crawled over to where Adrian was sitting, and she stared into his gorgeous green eyes as he looked at her with the same sincere smile he always had when he looked towards her. They inched closer. Looked into each other's eyes. Their lips touched, and both of their eyes closed. And Marinette blushed as he rested his hand on her face. As they kissed, something in Adrian clicked, and he realized something he had never thought he'd felt before. Well, at least he had not thought he'd felt it about Marinette. Their tongues began to intertwine, and what was meant to be a small peck turned them into full-on making out. After what felt to them like an eternity, they pulled away from each other. Marinette blushed, and she decided to do something she'd never think she'd get the courage to do. "Adrian, I'm in love with you," Marinette blurted out. Everyone in the room gasped. Adrian smiled. As we kissed, something inside me just clicked, and I realized that I have feelings for you. For years I lied to myself, but now I know how I feel about you. And I realize that now. So there's really no point asking you. So, Marinette, do you want to be my girlfriend? Said Adrian, beaming. Marinette froze, still processing, and then she snapped out of the trance-like state she was in, and she blushed, smiled, and agreed to his request. They shared a long embrace, and everybody in the room cheered. They then started to kiss again. But as they did, the trap door to Marinette's room opened, and Marinette's mother, Sabine Chang, walked in while they were kissing. Marinette looked over. "Mrs. Chang, Marinette and I are dating." "Really?" she said ecstatically. "Yeah," said Marinette. When did this start?" said Sabine. "Like just now," said Marinette. "I have to tell your dad," she called out. "Tom!" Sabine went downstairs to look to where her husband was watching TV. "Tom! Adrian and Marinette are dating," she said proudly. Adrian then heard a sound he'd never think he'd ever hear in his entire life. He heard the sound of a middle-aged man squealing from excitement. It started to get late, and people began to leave. It was bordering 12 a.m., and Adrian was the last one there. "It's pretty late. Wouldn't your dad be getting, worried?" said Marinette. "Actually, I was thinking maybe I could stay overnight," said Adrian. "Oh, I'm not really ready for that," said Marinette. "Oh, no, it's way too soon for that," said Adrian. So Marinette agreed. They went to sleep in her bed, cuddling close together, And Adrian felt this was the best night's sleep he had had. Because most nights he felt alone because his room was so big. And he felt some sort of emptiness. But with Marinette in his arms, he felt so cozy in her bed. "I knew the kid would realize eventually," said Plag.
"Yeah, they truly are made for each other,"
replied Tiki.
"Yep,"
said Plag.
"So, should we tell them?"
said Plag.
"I mean, it would make things easier,"
said Tiki.
"Maybe we should just guide them,"
said Plag.
"Let's just see what happens first,"
Tiki said. The end. Thank you for watching.